Picture this: a city where trains arrive every 2 minutes like clockwork, where floods that would cripple other metropolises simply vanish before reaching your doorstep, where over 8 million people move through underground arteries daily, yet rush hour feels oddly calm. This isn't some futuristic fantasy. This is Seoul, South Korea right now. And the blueprint that makes it work might just be the most overlooked urban planning marvel of the 21st century. But here's what makes Seoul's story truly remarkable. Just 70 years ago, this city was rubble. The Korean War reduced it to ash 4 separate times between 1950 and 1953. Nearly 200,000 buildings were obliterated. The population plummeted from 1.5 million to just 200,000 souls clinging to survival. Yet today, Seoul's metropolitan area houses 26 million people, the 4th largest urban concentration on Earth, and it functions better than cities that never saw a bomb. So what happened? How did a war-shattered river valley transform into perhaps the planet's most meticulously engineered capital? The answer lies in a series of brilliant decisions, some born from desperation, others from foresight, that turned Seoul's greatest weaknesses into its most powerful advantages. When geography becomes your greatest teacher. Let's rewind to 1953. The Armistice Agreement stopped the shooting, but Seoul faced an impossible puzzle. Refugees flooded back into the devastated city. By 1955, the population had already surged back to 1.5 million. But Seoul wasn't like other cities. It couldn't sprawl outward like Los Angeles or Houston. The city was trapped in a geographical vice. Mountains ringed the basin on all sides. The demilitarized zone loomed just 40 kilometers to the north, a constant reminder that sprawl northward meant vulnerability. The Han River sliced the city in half. And here's the critical part. Korean planners looked at these constraints and made a radical choice. Instead of fighting geography, they weaponized it. In 1966, Seoul adopted a comprehensive plan that treated mountains not as barriers but as assets. Industrial zones went downstream, separating factories from residential areas. Terraced apartment blocks began absorbing new residents. Then came the masterstroke. In 1971, Seoul drew a legal boundary that would define the city forever, a protected greenbelt spanning 149 square kilometers, locking nearly a quarter of the city's land off-limits to development. Think about that decision for a moment. A city bursting with refugees and desperate for housing deliberately made a quarter of its land untouchable. It sounds insane. But this forced constraint created something unprecedented, a virtuous cycle where density didn't just demand solutions, it funded them. The vertical solution nobody wanted to build. When you can't build outward, you build upward. But Seoul didn't just stack people in towers and call it progress. They reimagined what high-density living could be. Today, over 62% of Korean homes are apartment buildings, 5 stories or higher, with even greater concentration in Seoul proper. Critics from the West look at these identical towers and see dystopia, soulless monotony, cookie-cutter urbanism. But walk into one of these complexes and you'll discover something different. Within a 5-minute stroll, residents find kindergartens, grocery stores, fitness centers, and clinics. Management fees cover security, renovation, and maintenance, so elevators actually work and facades age evenly. Here's the genius part. By concentrating people vertically, Seoul freed up ground-level space for what actually makes a city livable. Parks, transit stations, schools. The more people used these services, the more viable they became, prompting further investment. Density didn't just create problems, it created the tax base and ridership numbers that justified world-class solutions. And those solutions were coming faster than anyone expected. The subway that redefined urban movement. Stand on any Seoul platform at dawn, and you'll feel it. A controlled tidal force. 21 rail lines fold through the city and its satellites, stretching an almost incomprehensible 940 kilometers. Those steel veins carry more than 8 million passenger trips daily, which translates to 2.4 billion passengers in 2024 alone. That's nearly 30% of the entire world's population moving through one city's subway system in a single year. But raw numbers don't capture what makes Seoul's transit revolutionary. It's the integration. In 2004, the city introduced the T-Money card and fundamentally rewrote the rules. One tap unlocks buses, metros, and taxis. But here's the key innovation. Fares are calculated on distance, not transfers. Switch from bus to subway to another bus within 30 minutes? You're not paying 3 times. This single policy change eliminated duplicate routes, reduced congestion, and made the entire system feel like one unified organism rather than competing services. Compare that to Los Angeles, where fewer than 8% of commutes use transit, or the United States broadly, where 73% of people still drive to work, while only 13% use public transportation. Seoul achieves a 52% public transit modal share. In a metropolitan area of 26 million people, over half of all trips happen on trains and buses. The result? Seoul is the only major city in South Korea where vehicle registrations actually decreased last year, down by 14,000 cars. The ratio sits at 1 vehicle for every 2.94 people, well below the national average. Younger generations simply aren't buying cars. Why would they? The subway runs every 2 minutes. GPS data ensures buses arrive exactly when predicted, and apps tell you the crowding level in your next train car before it even arrives. When you rip out highways and plant rivers instead, but Seoul's most audacious move happened above ground, and it started with a highway that everyone thought was indispensable. For decades, 6 lanes of elevated concrete strangled downtown Seoul. The Cheonggyecheon Stream, once a vital waterway, had been buried under pavement in 1966, then topped with a flyover in 1967. Trucks rattled overhead while the forgotten stream rotted below. Most cities would have left it there forever. Seoul's mayor looked at that highway in 2003 and said, "Tear it down." Skeptics predicted apocalyptic gridlock. Engineers warned of disaster. And yet in 2005, that highway was gone, replaced by 5.8 kilometers of flowing water, boardwalks, and parks. The project cost $380 million, not a small bet, but the returns were staggering. Rush hour speeds actually climbed as drivers shifted to the subway network that was built for exactly this moment. Temperatures near the restored stream dropped by 3.6 degrees Celsius. Small particle pollution fell by 34%. Wildlife returned within months. Dragonflies, fish, herons. Birds that hadn't been seen in downtown Seoul for 40 years suddenly reappeared. But the real magic wasn't environmental. It was psychological. Seoul proved something that most cities still don't believe. Remove asphalt and life flows in to fill the void. Weekend crowds at the Cheonggyecheon now rival subway concourses. The stream cools, cleans, and calms. And it taught Seoul's planners a lesson they'd apply again and again. In 2017, the city did it again. An aging highway overpass from 1970 was transformed into Solo 7017, a sky garden elevated 17 meters above street level. Nearly 1,000 meters of walking path, lined with 24,000 plants representing 228 species. 16 pavilions housing cafes, exhibitions, even trampolines and footbaths. The project cost $52 million, and it completely reimagined how pedestrians move through the city center. Notice the pattern? Seoul doesn't just build green space, it reclaims car infrastructure and converts it into people space. Every redesign follows one rule: people first, cars if space remains. The smart city that actually works. Now here's where Seoul separates itself from every other city claiming to be smart. Most places slap sensors on light poles and call it innovation. Seoul built an entirely new nervous system. The city installed 34,000 public Wi-Fi routers citywide. It laid 4,237 kilometers of fiber optic cables connecting every government office, district, and community center. It deployed over 2,500 sensors monitoring everything from air quality to traffic flow to flood risk. And then, this is the crucial part, it made that data useful. Every bus streams GPS coordinates to a central dashboard. Algorithms adjust headways minute by minute. Payment data reveals exactly where transfers spike, and the city adds direct shuttle routes within weeks, not years. Smart poles merge lighting, 5G, surveillance, Wi-Fi, and pollution sensors into single units. The average 5G download speed tops 1.1 gigabits per second. But Seoul's planners understood something most smart city boosters miss. Technology isn't the goal. Solving headaches is the goal. Technology is just the tool. Residents barely notice the hardware, yet they feel the result. Fewer red lights, cleaner air, Wi-Fi that seldom buffers, live maps showing subway crowding so you can choose a less packed car, apps revealing which cafeteria still has kimchi stew at 1 p.m. This is infrastructure doing double duty, constantly tweaked in real time using real data. It's the opposite of the static, build it and forget it mentality that cripples most urban planning. The underground insurance policy. But perhaps Seoul's most impressive infrastructure is the kind you pray you'll never need. Deep beneath the streets, massive storm tunnels stand ready to swallow cloudbursts before they reach your doorstep. These aren't ordinary sewers. They're 8-meter diameter reinforced concrete culverts buried 30 meters underground in solid bedrock, stretching for 3 kilometers or more. Seoul's flood tunnels can handle 200-year storm events. When torrential rain hits, sensors in drains automatically alert the city to open upstream floodgates. Water that would flood entire neighborhoods instead gets routed into these underground arteries and flushed directly into the Han River. The city is currently building 6 more of these systems at a cost of over 1 trillion won, with the most ambitious, the Isu-Gwacheon Complex Tunnel, set to open in 2031. This is planning for resilience, not just efficiency. Seoul learned from catastrophe, and it refuses to be vulnerable again. Seoul took geography that should have strangled growth and turned it into structure. It took wartime devastation and rebuilt not just buildings, but systems. It took the forced constraint of mountains, rivers, and borders and created a city that doesn't sprawl, but intensifies, doesn't congest, but flows, doesn't isolate, but connects. That's not luck. That's brilliant urban planning. And the world is only beginning to notice.